Hello, hello, this is Pixie. Maybe I should get closer. Maybe I should just freehold it, because it might be seen better. Like, it looks kind of like some sort of scary film or movie. I was just doing some study work on Jordan Peterson, and he mentioned about basically you can alter the culture of people, but their biological imperatives or their makeup make certain active choices, which is very true. There was an example with young children. They gave a little girl just boys' toys, and she ended up wrapping it in a blanket and cradling a truck, I think. So there's certain things people will do because they're built into our nature, our early biological nature. But what drives that nature is our hormones. So if you were trying to create gender equality, the only issue with that, all the science would point to, if you wanted to change the balance of power and create some type of 50-50 dichotomy, you would have to hormonally change people. And that's scary because you might do it subtly, you might put it into things that maybe men would have and maybe women would have, and then that will create issues. Like say for example, for birth control, if I started putting testosterone in it, or if I was something for male products, I started putting estrogen in it, I started creating imbalances. And what would happen, I mean, you could socially engineer someone, like say someone for a young age, and you wanted to excel in a certain career, and they started along that path, but they wasn't really interested, say, so much in people and them types of functions, or you could change someone's biological background, and I guess they'll probably switch back at some point. I mean, there's been, I remember a story about someone's daughter was really good at maths, but the problem they had was that when she got to a teenage, she became very interested in people, and mathematics was more of a thing. But if she could apply that model to people, then she'd like statistics and things like that. She'd be very interested in it. She didn't have a way to use that to further her communication and people skills. But bit like, ooh, it's gone on. Oh my god. Oh, maybe I can't override it. That's scary, isn't it? No, you just got me completely dark. But the only problem is with that is that basically that kind of modelling, there is a way I can override that. I should be able to. There we go. Back. Turn that off again. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, is you could use hormone treatment, but you could subtly put it into the population and cause certain changes, which is scary. And the other thing is about men losing their role in society and women growing into a new kind of role. There's power shifts, and it's because of technology. There's the third wave, AI. Basically, men have got to such a point that they've started replacing themselves with their own perfections. And I guess that's the kind of, I guess for the male archetype is power. And so they've created something of power. For women, it's nature. So they've had to master their own biological nature. So how to explain that? Things like birth control, control over things like monthly cycles. So there's different hormonal issues they've adapted to. And I guess there's other things as well. I'm just trying to think of biological, but it's very much about the nature women. So maybe with the equality, they're trying to propose a new type of nature onto men and the environment, because they're seeing a shift in power. Maybe it's a reaction to change. And there's the fear of what technology should represent. Like, should it be female, some of it? Should it be male? I mean, you've got things like Alexa, and they are female. But the AI, is it completely female? It's it's a bit of a mixed bag there. What that represents. So that's the issue, is that there's a pendulum swing, and there's this technology that's moving in the middle, and eventually the females will be redundant from certain points. Or there's the other thing is about fertility mastery, or fertility control. So not just birth control, but you can harvest your eggs and have children at any time. There might be another way to like I say, through technology, have a child without having to have a child. Artificially do it, and equally for men. And so it creates this other area where people that are gender neutral consider themselves, they've probably integrated with technology more because it doesn't adhere to that. At some level, nature does, but that's usually different types of life forms of certain biological programming, and so therefore we stick to that. If you change that, you're changing yourself. You're changing yourself as a life form into something else. So it's more of a alchemic alterization. So yeah, I mean, most people try to see themselves as a synergy of what they consider God is. I mean, the God I understand has probably got three elements to it. Basically, it's got the element, I guess you could say, it's wisdom, but it's this the consciousness, the deep-rooted consciousness of things. It projects morality and balance and things like that, and it synergizes very closely with power, and the power one is like the light energy, and it's so powerful and dominant energy that it can basically, if it's uncontrolled, or the manifestation of it, because it seeks purity, it basically would obliterate things. And then you've got chaos, which if chaos isn't regulated by some sort of consciousness, it will keep manifesting and changing things, and it creates other things. It probably has a synergy with like Chronos, time, as well as nature. So there's a whole load to all. Is time a construct of the consciousness, which places it into this other realm? So it's just trying to figure out the Trinity, because it's the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost. What does that mean? Well, Son must be the power, because you can also relate to it as the Son. The Father is the key head of the wisdom, and the Holy Ghost is unboundless. So it's something like nature. It's a force that exists that can't be measured. So it's immeasurable. But the other thing is there's a synergetic duality between nature and power. One wants to dominate into its form, and the other manifests the form into its own creation. And so one wants to break free of the other. That's why there's a kind of thing with people where they see themselves as passing away and moving on to this other light and becoming a more pure state, free of pain and all these other things. But will they be? If you walk into the light, will you actually give up your identity and unify with something else? You may just become like a flow of energy. So it's like all the photons merging together or something. It's emergence basically, and you won't be a greater form of yourself. You won't be a lesser form, and you may realise that you've still got this Trinity inside you, that your consciousness is there, and that you've got some element of the shadow in you, and that would be your nature, what manifests your ego, what manifests your desire and instincts to be what you are, what makes you want to be male. The things that make you an individual are in the chaos. Power doesn't need to subjugate to any form. It's basically unfathomable. It can't be stopped. But through chaos, it creates division and formality and control. And I guess the control is also in the consciousness. It's a very hard thing, because basically it's like algebra, and you're mixing different values together and they create different equations from it. So how one form relates to the other. I've gone slightly off topic, but I guess the middle form, the other thing as well, as we've integrated with technology, there's archonic intelligence. So we're starting to manifest our consciousness into places like the internet and technology. That may sound weird, but how people are gratified and biologically react. The thing is, how you can tell you've got an integral relationship with technology is the impact it has on you. If it changes characteristics in you, like likes, notifications, projects my consciousness, it's a bit like people who do follow or look at my videos will only know me through my videos, but they extrapolate their own form of understanding about what kind of a person I am. and in essence, there's a kind of a psychic bridge between me and you, to be honest, if you're listening at the moment. So the consciousness, the mind, I mean, basically how we evolved is a metaphysical evolution rather than a biological. Biological represents one stage, but it's got limitations. And there's other areas where it haven't got limitations, so it will continue to expand. And that's I think Carl Jung was on some of this stuff about like archetypes and development. And there's something there's a chap, Terence, maybe it's McGregor, no, Terence. But anyway, basically his way is it transcended into technology and beyond, and that would be represent the bridge, and whether we can manifest a consciousness into technology or transfer things into there, or whether we can encryption of our DNA can be turned into some sort of binary language and then transferred into something. And what that does is it creates a kind of anchor between you and that technology. So there's so much potential there, but the fear of it is what's being created, and also maybe this pendulum of swing, because manual labour and things were taken over by machines, and now who can operate a machine doesn't require a certain set skill. The machine becomes, so you don't need that particular engineer to deal with it, and it becomes another thing. The technology, you can control it through communication. You can, basically you just need to organise people to do the work and things like that. So it becomes, you can see this other where technology moved in, and sort of certain feminist movements were there because there's opportunities to grow. No longer did they have to have a dictatorship whereby we rule by numbers, because it was ruled by communication skills and integration with technology. Now it's the technology is starting to replace some female skills as well. It's starting to predict text. It's starting to instigate ways to communicate. There's predictive text and stuff on the with like the phone. So it's going into things where people consult AI for advice, in order to function in society. And you've got people that are basically integrated with their phones. They're walking around constantly talking to their phones, and if their phone's removed, they have withdrawal symptoms. So it's almost like an organ to them, in that sense. And how that will manifest. Because the thing is with kind of consciousness, connections, that kind of psychic integration, if I'm very close to someone, I can, at some empathic level, I can influence them. This sometimes happens with people close to you, and it depends how spiritual you are, or just in tune with yourself. You don't have to really put spiritual as a module. It's that there's different quantum functions, possibly, of yourself, or this meta functions, or something beyond para functions, because at some point you go from the biological into an energetic form, subatomic as well, and we all share certain things that are all the same. We could be all the same entity, just in different shells, and so therefore we can influence each other to a certain degree. And there's certain experiments where this has been true as well, with like some sort of 12 monkey experiment. They taught 12 monkeys a skill, and then the whole genetic population related to them instantly knew the skill. The learning time to regain that skill was possibly reduced by a quarter. And it wasn't that there were smarter monkeys on a different island. It's that they had become influenced by a past experience, almost like it had stimulated something. And these different skills are, I guess, for humans as well. So anyway, this was finished on that. So basically, Jordan Peterson's. I was just watching his talks. He talked about biological differences and how basically from a state view or something else, how they could influence that. I mean, basically, if you gave people shots, you could do it through vaccines as well. If you gave different vaccines to females than you did males, then you could start actually altering them biologically, and then you can turn around and say, well, equality, 50% need to do this, 50%, and then you'll have people that haven't quite integrated with that chemical. I guess it's at some level chemical castration. People will start becoming infertile, but people that can't integrate with that will be considered the failures in society because they don't fit the models. Same with education. If you don't fit the model, this gender neutral model, say you like to learn things physically and you haven't got academic skills and you kind of just fall out from the system completely. So it's kind of gender-led learning. And the problem I got, something I'm doing some thesis or something on it at the moment, is sometimes the people that write policies or put systems in place aren't from that background. They seem as fair, like this person needs that. I've had this thing with an example. They put something on for boys to play football. None of the boys turned up because if they want, even though they love football, they want to play on their own terms. They don't want something set up by adults. And even though it might seem like fairness or a way to engage them, they just see it as a form of social manipulation, and that they see themselves as their own little group, their own social structures. They don't need to integrate in that level, and that's sometimes the issue when you push agendas onto people, that you cause what would be considered social rebellion. So that's it. Anyway, this is Pixie on this talk, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.